1045 The Team, 1045theteam.com. Brady and Goz in for Levac again on this Monday, and on the phone right now out of ESPN New York, it's Ian Begley, covers the New York Knicks. Ian, the Knicks 30-44, 8 games left in the season. Is there anything we can learn about this team going forward in the final 8 games, or are we just counting down to the finish line?
I think it depends on who you ask. One thing I'll be keeping an eye on is the minutes that Jaren Grant gets down the stretch here. Will he play more than 20 minutes a night? Will Kurt Rambis play him ahead of Jose Calderon or Sasha Vujacic? It doesn't sound like he's going to be inserted into the starting lineup, but could he at least get some more minutes to see what you have, see how he handles consistent minutes in these final handful of games here? One other thing I'll be keeping an eye on is how often does Kristaps Porzingis play on the interior? How often does he cut from the perimeter to the interior? That's something the coaching staff has been asking him to do, and it seemed to work out pretty well in those games against the Bulls. So can he continue to have similar success there? So I think it's about the young guys. Let's see what the young guys can do. Let's see what happens when you throw more minutes at Grant, and let's see how Porzingis plays on the inside.
You bring up Porzingis, letter grade like you're back in school, A through F. What grade would you give Porzingis in his rookie season?
Yeah, he's been very good. If I am grading him, I would probably go A-. Okay. I think he's been fantastic. I think, to be expected, he's hit a couple rough patches over the course of the season, but no one who is thinking rationally would guess otherwise, so that's okay. And I think he's given the Knicks much more than they anticipated. I think, privately, the organization probably didn't expect much from him in his rookie season, and he's blown those expectations away. He's been the second best rookie in the NBA, and he's given Knicks fans a reason to be optimistic about the future.
Ian Begley of ESPN New York with us on 1045 The Team, 1045theteam.com. Just 8 games left for those New York Knicks. And Ian, you're talking about Kristaps Porzingis. We heard the story come out last week that Kurt Rambis doesn't really want him to play in the Olympics or in Olympic qualifiers. Do the Knicks have any right to tell him what to do when it comes to the Olympics?
No, it's his call. It's his decision to make. He will make that decision in conjunction with the rest of the Knicks, with Phil Jackson, with Steve Mills, with Kurt Rambis. So, yeah, they can't tell him what to do, but they can certainly suggest what they'd like him to do, and they'd like him to stay here to work with the coaching staff, to work with the training staff, to work on his conditioning and to add some weight this summer. That's their hope. They also hope that he can get some rest rather than playing for his national team. So he's got an interesting decision to make, and it's going to be up to him, but I think ultimately he'll probably decide to stick around here.
What's the status of the head coaching situation for next season? Will it be Kurt Rambis?
He's going to get a long look from Phil Jackson. Phil will certainly consider Kurt, but I don't think it's anything like a foregone conclusion that Kurt gets the job. I think Phil would like to hire Kurt because Kurt knows the triangle well and he's close friends with Phil. But I think Phil will also look at other candidates, see who else is out there, put a call into Luke Walton, and I think that he'll do his due diligence with some other candidates. I certainly think, though, that Kurt is a strong candidate, maybe the odds-on favorite at this point.
The fans in Albany hate Kurt Rambis because of what he did or didn't do with Jimmer Fredette. What is the overall grand feeling about Kurt Rambis, though?
I think fans would be disappointed if Kurt was hired because of his career record and the record with the Knicks hasn't been fantastic. So I think if Phil were to make that hire, he should expect some fan backlash. There's something to be said for continuity, and there's something to be said for the front office and the coaching staff being on the same page. So I think, if you look at those factors, there would be benefits to hiring Kurt, but I would anticipate a rough fan reaction if that was the case.
That's on the bench. When it comes to the actual court, what are some of the most likely free agent moves or trades that could happen this summer?
I think they'll look to upgrade the backcourt, and I think, they'll be in on Mike Conley, I'm sure. I would imagine that they put a phone call into Rajon Rondo and his camp. I would assume that they scour the trade market. Maybe a guy like Jeff Teague becomes available again. Maybe they put in another phone call to the Atlanta Hawks. I'm sure looking at the shooting guards on the market, DeMar DeRozan, Nick Batum, I would assume that the Knicks will have interest in those two as well. I think they want to put some money into the backcourt, revamp the backcourt, because the starting front line seems to be in pretty good shape with Robin Lopez, Carmelo Anthony, Kristaps, Porzingis.
Ian Begley of ESPN New York with us on 104.5 The Team and 104.5theteam.com. Brady and Gaz in for Levac. And Ian, within the last 3 weeks, I've heard some of the most ridiculous rumors, in my opinion, regarding the Knicks. One, you mentioned Rajon Rondo. Two, I heard about Dwight Howard potentially wanting to play in New York. And three, Phil Jackson maybe coaching only home games and someone else coaching on the road. Please tell me for my sanity that none of those three things are going to happen.
Phil's definitely not going to be coaching the team. Dwight Howard, I think, would like to come here. I don't think he's a Phil Jackson player. Rondo, I don't see him coming here either. I think of those three rumors, if you want to place them in order of likelihood, probably Rondo is the most likely, and Phil coaching would be the least likely. But I don't see any of those happening, I should say. So I just want to put your mind at ease there a little bit.
What about Phil Jackson overall? His status with the Knicks going forward, is there any chance he may leave and step aside at the end of this season or even next season?
I think it kind of depends on this summer. I mean, there's always the specter of owner James Dolan. And, the idea that Phil would want to hire a coach and maybe Jim has other ideas. I think if Jim were to say to Phil, you can't hire this guy, if Phil wants to hire a specific coach, maybe that leads Phil to reconsider things. I think if Jim steps in on any personnel moves, Phil would probably not take that kindly and maybe consider leaving. So I don't see it as likely, but I do think you wait to see what happens this summer, and it's certainly always a possibility.
They play the Pelicans tonight. Carmelo Anthony, former Syracuse guy. I know he's hoping for his team to win tonight, but are you going to be the one to ask him about Syracuse's Final Four appearance after the game?
I'm sure that he's going to be asked that ad nauseum, not only tonight, but later this week as the games approach. I know he's fired up about it, and I'm just happy that he's got something to be happy about this year, because he hasn't had much to be happy about on the court.
Ian Begley with us from ESPN New York, breaking down the Knicks and all things Knicks related. 8 games left in that Knicks season. We appreciate the time, Ian. Thanks for being with us.
Always happy to be with you guys. Take care.